They're so low information, man. Yo, these panels with multiple people on here are really dumb. Like, the most ignorant people have the loudest voice. You ever notice that? People who actually know what they're talking about, they're usually, like, quieter. People who don't know anything, loudest voice in the room. And then if you just, like, act confident, people think you know what you're talking about. What the hell's up with it? What is wrong with people? How did we even survive this long? Like, it's a miracle that there's humans on this planet still, with the way people behave. How they refuse to use their God-given reason. Oh my gosh. How come people don't want to ever think about things? Is it like painful for them to think? I swear. I mean the noise. So I was thinking we could read the paper, the revelatory theism paper. So I don't know that this like book on morality is really great for the stream, the live. There's a really good paper called The Contingency of Knowledge and Revelatory Theism by Russ Mannion. And he lays out a transcendental argument for God in the paper. Does a pretty good job. Pretty good. Pretty Ricky. Go up one more. Nope. Are my parents religious? Yeah, my parents were Catholic. They raised me to be Catholic. There is evidence for God. There's so much evidence for God, it's actually impossible for there to be more evidence for God. We are at the max peak limit of evidence for God. We're up to our nose in evidence for God. Where's the science? Well, science is only possible if Christian revelation is true. So the fact that science is possible is proof of Christian revelation.
What's going on, man?
Yeah, what's going on?
So, are you a Christian?
Yeah, I'm a Christian.
Do you believe in everything in the Bible?
Yes.
Everything?
Yes.
Have you read? I mean, I've never read the Bible completely, all the way through. I've read segments of it, but I'm not here to dunk on you or anything. I'm just actually curious, like, where your beliefs come from and, like, why you think God exists and what your proof is.
Well, I think the Bible is objectively provable with a transcendental argument for God. That the idea is that knowledge is only possible if the claims of the Bible are true. So to deny the Bible would be like to deny knowledge itself, which would be impossible.
Okay. So I have an issue with the Bible because of some certain stories in the Bible that are like pretty much just like magic. right? So, like, say Jonah and the whale or something. When you read that, I'm just like, what? I don't get how that could ever happen, or how anyone could ever believe in that, right?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, how can a man survive within the side of a whale for 3 days?
Well, you believe there's like a black hole at the center of the galaxy that's so powerful light can't escape its gravity.
I never said that.
You don't believe in black holes?
I don't think I think they exist. I guess, right? I mean, there's evidence of them, but
Well, sure, but like, how come you can believe in a black hole, but you can't believe in this like story of the whale? Like, it
I think it's just
doesn't.
provable that you couldn't live inside of a whale for 3 days.
Well, but George Bernard Shaw he's gonna say that like the encyclopedia and science make claims that are harder to believe than any claim in the Bible. So I think if you can like believe science, then you can believe the Bible. I don't think there should be an issue.
I mean, there's just ways to disprove it, though. Like
There's not.
you could put infinite people inside of a whale, and none of them will survive for 3 days, right? Unless there's some kind of magic involved or something.
Well, sure. So we disagree over what's possible and impossible.
Okay.
Because I'm going to say, like, because God, through his divine providence, he can make things possible that would seem like impossible by some sort of scientific metric, right?
Sorry, what we say? Sorry. What were we saying?
Someone who has sort of like doesn't a standard where they reject someone who has a standard that thinks like this any supernatural thing is impossible is going to reject this idea that like God, a supernatural being, could make some things possible that seem scientifically implausible.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah.
Right. So I believe that's easily explained because just God is God, right? Like he can do what he wants, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of. So, are you saying you can prove God exists, or you just think he exists? Because I think there's a big fine line between, like, I will never tell a Christian God's dumb, God doesn't exist. Like, if you believe in God, by all means, believe in him. But I think there's a level of faith that's added in there versus proof. Like, I can't prove that God doesn't exist. However, you can have all the faith in the world that you think that God exists and you have faith in him. Like, I think that's different. When you come on and say that you can prove it, I'm like, okay, how? All right.
Well, I would say that God is necessary for proof. So you wouldn't be able to prove anything without Christian revelation.
What do you mean?
I could take like any fact and show that like Christian revelation is necessary for that fact to be true. Like I bring up an example of boiling noodles. To boil noodles, there has to be uniformity of nature. So consistently, when we heat water to 160 degrees, it has to boil.
Okay.
And the only thing that could explain that is Christian revelation, because there's no other way to justify that there's this uniformity in nature, there's order in the world. It'd be unexplainable without Christian revelation.
I don't get why that's unexplainable. Without what do you mean? What do you mean Christian revelation?
Like the Bible, the claims of the Bible.
So the Bible proves that noodles can boil. I don't get it.
The Bible proves that there's uniformity in the world because God created the world, and through divine providence, he imposes and maintains that there's going to be some regularity along with irregularities in the reality that we experience. So you'd have to explain, we experience this regularity in the world. That's what makes science possible in the first place. And there's no way to explain that apart from Christian revelation. So Christian revelation is like necessary to even do science.
It sounds like a very easy way to explain everything. Like in the sense of this is because God. Like this is happening because God. And then there's no like actual evidence behind that, right? I don't know.
Well,
The earth is perfect for humans to live and thrive because of God. Like, okay, well, that's a very easy way to put it. Like a simple way to put it that just kind of like negates like how we got here, right?
well, the evidence is just going to be evidence itself. So we both agree, like evidence is possible. And then I'm just asking the question, what is necessary for evidence to be possible? And lo and behold, the claims of the Bible are going to be necessarily true for evidence to be possible.
Well, yeah, I think it always comes back to like just faith. Like you have faith in the Bible.
I'm giving you a logical proof. It's not. It's
Yeah,
not
there's no
blind
proof
faith.
of it. Though. There's no proof of a
I
God.
just gave you a proof, and you're ignoring it.
No, I don't. That's not true.
It is true. It's called a transcendental proof. That logic, the claims of the Bible are necessarily true for knowledge to be possible. Since you could not deny knowledge, it's impossible to deny
Have
knowledge.
knowledge without the Bible.
You can't have knowledge without the Bible.
Then what were people doing before Jesus was born? Or before the Old Testament? Before Old Testament.
People before the Bible had knowledge because the claims of the Bible were true.
I don't get that. It makes no sense to me. So do you believe in, I guess like, let's go back. I guess you don't believe in evolution, right?
No, but for knowledge to be the case, there has to be certain things that are true in the world, right? Like,
I mean, I don't get what that means. Like, you can have knowledge without like the Bible.
if we were in a world where there were no limitations and anything was possible, could we have knowledge in that world?
Sure, right?
No.
I don't get what you're getting at.
In a world without limitation, and if anything is possible, we wouldn't be able to have knowledge because knowledge is going to require like some sort of consistency, order, and coherence to reality.
You can have that without the Bible.
If anything is possible, there's no consistency or coherence to reality so that we can know reality.
Okay, but you can have knowledge without the Bible. Like you can have people.
But I'm making an argument that you can't.
Why? I don't get it. There's many cultures that have never even seen the Bible and have plenty of knowledge.
You're not focusing on what I'm presenting to you. This is a common thing. For when you reject the Bible, your mental faculties become dull, and it's like you can't focus on what's being said to you in a conversation. Has anyone ever told you that?
No.
Okay, well, you're not focusing. So
Okay, go ahead. Sorry. I'm actually just trying to understand what you're trying to say. I actually have no clue what you're saying.
you have knowledge.
I do have knowledge, yes.
Okay. To have knowledge that requires certain things to be the case, because if the world
Explain that.
For example, if the world was a certain type of way, let's say we lived in a world without limitation, in a world where anything is possible and there was no limits to the states of existence of all the things that existed in the world, there's no limitation. You couldn't have knowledge in that world because anything you claim about the world, there'd be no limit to the claim, the state of existence that you're talking about. There's no limit to it. So it could possibly change at any moment. So in a world where anything is possible and there's no limits to the states of existence of things, that type of world makes knowledge impossible. So that world.
Okay, but no one's claiming that everything that like the world's limitless. No one's claiming that. No atheists are claiming.
Here's the question: the thing that's going to limit defined possibilities in a world is ultimate reality, right? But as an atheist or as a non-Christian, you can't have knowledge of ultimate reality. So you are in a situation called ultimate mystery, and that would entail anything is possible, which would destroy the possibility for us to know anything. So that world cannot be true. Well, then what's ultimate reality that's not God?
Okay, so what you're saying to me pretty much is you need the Bible to have some form of reality in the world, right? So there's like some like
knowledge to be possible, the world has to be a certain way. And that type of world is the world described in the Bible. And the type of world that atheists are trying to present makes knowledge impossible. Therefore, atheism is necessarily false and the Bible is necessarily true. Hello? What?
It's just not true, though. You can.
Nuh-uh.
The world presented in the Bible is not the world we live in.
Nuh-uh. We now know the claims of the Bible are true.
No, we don't. The world was not created in 6 days. It's pretty disproven.
Nuh-uh.
It's a great argument.
Nuh-uh.
Okay, prove to me that the world was created in 6 days.
Nuh-uh.
There you go.
So now you're at a crossroads. Are you going to embrace radical skepticism, or are you going to become a Christian?
Well, there's no skepticism. It's just, hey, we take evidence and we use it to come up with ideas.
Exactly. Another emotional reaction, ladies and gentlemen. Notice how he couldn't even answer my questions.
Like I just answered your question. What are you talking about?
This is what atheism does to your brain, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, what?
The rejection of God's revelation actually dulls your mental faculties, so you behave like this gentleman on the panel.
You're the one who's just screaming "nut off" for like 5 minutes. I'm actually trying to have a
Don't be like
conversation.
this person. Don't be like this person. Thank you for coming.
Hey, look at your chat. Look at your chat.
Well, everyone hates me because they hate the truth. The Bible says...
I'm not here to debunk you.
The Bible says that
God's dumb. You can have faith in God. That's fine. I'm just saying that you to say that atheists are wrong because they're basing their knowledge off of evidence that they see in everyday life is not stupid.
The Bible says...
You can gain knowledge without the Bible.
The Bible says that you hate the truth, and atheism is like an emotional position. So it's like you're not going to listen to any like rational, logical proof that's like demonstrated.
It's rational that Jonah and the whale is real. Jonah and the whale is rational?
Yeah, I just presented a rational proof that it's true.
How is Jonah and the whale rational?
I just
you can believe in Jonah and the whale. I don't give a shit if you believe in it. But how is it rational? There's no proof. There's no evidence at all besides one fable in the Bible that says Jonah and the whale is true. There's no evidence ever that would ever back that.
Well, what about the fact that I presented a logical argument and you didn't? You're ignoring it.
I did talk to you.
Well, thank you for coming. I wish you well. Okay, thank you for coming. I wish you well.
I mean, that's fine. I'm just trying to have a cordial conversation. You don't on me. I'm actually just curious.
I gave you a proof, and you're not offering it. Now you have to give a defeater or an undercutter to the proof that I presented, or else
but it's not proof. It's just your thoughts. Like that's not proof. You can think anything.
I presented a proof. It doesn't matter if you agree with it, it's a proof or what. You have to offer a defeater or an undercutter to the argument, or else you're just being emotional.
What I said in the beginning.
Do you have a defeater or undercutter to my proof?
What I was saying in the beginning is that there's no proof that God doesn't exist, and there's no proof that God does exist. So therefore, it's just faith. That's the entire argument.
Okay, since you're not presenting a defeater or undercutter to my argument, I'm just going to assume. I'm assuming that my argument just works, and you're being emotional, and so now I'm just going to move to the next person because, I'm looking to talk to rational people.
Yeah, you're never going to change anyone's mind. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not about changing your mind; it's just about being rational. Right? So.
I don't get like this idea that being religious is rational.
Well, I presented a rational proof to you that the Bible's true, and you're not offering a defeater or undercutter to my proof.
Your proof was that knowledge is a thing because of the Bible.
That's not a defeater or undercutter. That's an emotional reaction to a logical proof.
Can you prove that evolution doesn't exist?
Can you give me a rational reason why there is no God?
Yeah, there's just no evidence of it.
There's no
evidence of the earth being created in 6 days. There's no evidence of Adam and Eve. There's no evidence.
Thanks for coming. I wish you well.
I mean, you
Welcome, Ginger.
Hi, it's very nice to see you. I'm not going to argue about atheism because myself am a Christian. But I am a little confused about your live and the messaging, and I just want to talk about that, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. My first point is that I think the way you're trying to spread the message of God is a little, is rubbing people the wrong way. And I want to explain that to you. The main reason I think you won't be able to open people's eyes to the word of God and the happiness is because people need the free choice to accept God and recognize that it's a personal choice to accept God. And there are people on this earth who don't, and that is fine. And I think the best way to open people to God, if you are intending to spread the gospel, is through being nice. And when they ask about why you're so nice and why you are the way that you are, you tell them why, which is because of God. God's love and wisdom that he puts upon you and allows you to spread. I just don't think that the way that you are going about attempting to spread the gospel is, it's incorrect. Or not incorrect, but I just don't think it will accomplish much.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm not really trying to spread the gospel here. It's a debate live. So the whole point of the live is to debate, and I think that the Bible is like objectively provable, and the Bible is rational. It's Christians are rational, and I think atheism is irrational. And so I'm just here to defend the rationality of Christianity. I'm not really trying to like convince people to be Christians or evangelize or spread the gospel or anything like that.
Okay, I can see that. I just have to say that you are never going to like debate. I understand you want to prove messaging, and I always think that debates end in irritating the other person. It's more just about proving your point and getting kind of a sort of ego boost that you are right and they're wrong. And I think that is negative and on the Christian community, as it gives an idea of how Christians are, and that they're, always trying to convert other people instead of trying to spread the love of God. And through like TikTok lives or online in general, I think, in doing this, it gives a negative outlook on Christianity and Christians, no matter the branch or the type of devotion you follow. I just think it's a very negative thing to do, and it reflects badly on the Bible, God, and Christian community.
Oh, it'd probably look a lot less negative if Christians would stop coming up here and saying that it's negative. Like, I think you're contributing to making it look more negative than it is. Like, you can frame anything to be like good or bad. Like, I could say playing violin is rubbing cat intestines on horsehairs, and while true, I could also frame it in a way that's more beautiful, because it is a beautiful thing. And debate is just a game. We're playing a game where we give reasons for why we think things are true. And so I don't understand like why you have a problem with me playing a game, a reason-giving game. It's just like playing Monopoly or something. It's like there's no difference.
Oh, no, I have no problem with your message. I'm just trying to give a little bit of information on it and show you that using the Bible and religion is an especially inflammatory topic. And for both Christians and non-Christians, doing a debate about this does more harm than good, even though, yes, like you said, there are positives of doing something like that. It can truly open people's eyes to the gospel and God and provide happiness for those people. But I think that the majority of the people watching your live are not doing that. And I get that you're using it as, a game and more of like an extracurricular and not a positive, or not positive, but not negative.
Did God give us the ability to reason and think?
Of course.
And should we exercise that ability?
Of course, but it should not win. Yeah, but this isn't really that, because a debate nowadays is not what a debate really is. The debate you think you're getting is that you having a reasonable, rational explanation with someone where you both debate why you think something, and then you guys both learn and grow off of it. But I think with this, it's more of a yelling back and forth at the other person, and that generates that negative aspect to it. Because when you debate online, specifically online, people aren't doing like the initial cause or what you say you want to happen, a intellectual conversation. It's normally people get annoyed and emotions fling, and it turns into something negative, like the person before, which I have no problem with. But when you argue something you obviously are defending something that you believe in, and no matter what, ego and pride and, as said, plays a part in that, and it brings out negative parts of ourselves. And so I have to go. I really do enjoyed our discussion, but I just want to say that keep aware that getting an intellectual bait from, a TikTok live it doesn't prosper really well.
And also, you're debating me that I shouldn't debate, which is kind of hypocritical.
No, I'm not debating you. I'm just giving you some information that, hey,
Yes,
this
debating.
may not be like what you think it is and may not be beneficial. But
Well, that was a
anyway,
good debate.
I hope you have a wonderful evening. God bless. And
God bless.
have a good night.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think she was kind of contradicting herself because her point was like I shouldn't be debating, but then she's up here debating me. So, yeah. That doesn't make sense to me. Don't debate people, but I'm going to debate you that you shouldn't debate people. Maybe think about that one. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, I got a couple of quick points, I guess. For starters, you say God exists, but there have literally been thousands of gods over thousands of years, right?
Right. So God reveals himself to everyone, and Christians have the best revelation.
So all those other gods were all the same God?
Well, I think God reveals himself to everyone, and so everyone kind of has a subconsciously kind of knows there's this God, right?
Well, I'm talking about 2,000 years. I mean, the Romans had gods, the Greeks had gods, Hawaiians thought volcanoes were gods.
Yeah, because it's like obvious there's a God, so everyone knows there's a God.
What's the validity of your particular God over the thousands of other gods?
My God basically is the only God that can make sense of reality. That the other gods, there's like contradictions in their systems at like found a starting point level. So it can't be true.
Okay, so you're just going to disavow all the other gods just because?
No, not just because. So
because it works for you.
No, we would use like a coherentist theory of truth, where we're talking about foundational. God's like a foundational belief, and so
right. But the Christian God is very specific. He's a very specific God. He has very specific traits. He does very specific things. He's credited with doing very specific things, and all of these other gods that have been through history have all been credited with doing very specific things. And every time that we find out that very specific thing was just a natural course of biology or physics, then we stop believing in that God.
Right, but I'm not doing a God of the gaps argument. I'm not saying like, oh, there's this phenomena we can't explain, and therefore
that's what God's for. He's how's the universe? Where the universe come from? That's what God's for. He explains where the universe came from, right?
Well, I'm going to say that he's necessary as a foundation for any explanation of anything. Like if
but he's not. But then you have the question of where did he come from?
Well, you said he's not. You say, oh, but he's not. But you're just going, nuh-uh. I can prove.
But what I'm saying is that him being an excuse for or an answer to everything leaves the question of where did he come from.
I can show that God is necessary to explain anything at all, because explanations require in philosophy it's called a single unifying principle, and God's like the single unifying principle that's necessary for explanations.
Under your understanding of reality?
No, under anyone's understanding. It's just
not under mine.
Yes,
it's not necessary for my understanding of reality.
Do you think you can explain things?
No, I can't explain things. But you making up a God to explain things isn't explaining things.
I'm saying like do you think science can explain something about the world?
Yes, definitely. Okay. Science has
What I'm saying is God is necessary for that to be true. So
no, it's not.
I just yes, you need a single unifying principle to do that.
Okay.
That's why God's necessary for science.
So all those other gods through history were just pretend.
Yes.
And this God is real, just because he fits your needs.
It's not about him fitting my needs. It's about what can we objectively prove is true or false, right? We can objectively prove Christianity is true.
No, you can't.
So based on what?
You can't prove that Christianity is true. You can't prove Jesus Christ rose from the dead. You can't prove Jesus Christ is God's son.
Yeah. I mean, you're just saying that. You're just asserting that.
No, but you're just asserting that he did it.
No, I gave you a proof, right?
What
so
proof?
I'm saying
what proof
it's a transcendental proof. So the idea is that God is necessary for explanations. We can explain things, therefore God exists.
He's not necessary. We have explanations for all kinds of things that don't require God.
Okay, so then what?
Putting that on there.
If he's not necessary, then what would be your single unifying principle?
I don't know, but you
exactly. So therefore, God's necessary.
A single unifying principle doesn't make it true.
What makes it true is that explanations are impossible without a single unifying principle.
Right. Explanation is impossible. You do not know, in other words.
Explanations need a single unifying principle. So when you think
you're just
okay, well,
this is a circular argument. I was just wanted to see what you thought about it. Have a good day, man.
Yeah, you're really emotional. Hopefully you stop hating God.
Oh no, I don't hate something that doesn't exist.
Okay, I wish you well.
Yeah, you too.
He hates the truth. They all hate the truth. I don't need a single unifying principle because nuh-uh. Have you considered nuh-uh? A welcome guest.
How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I just want to say that there is no truth and there is nothing objective at all.
Oh, really? Well, there's no reason for us to talk then.
Well, do you want to hear my argument?
If you don't think anything is true, then
that is not necessary. I'm just having a conversation. I don't need the concept of truth to talk to you.
Okay. Yes, you do. To join my panel.
Because I'm still talking and I don't believe there is truth. Do you see the contradiction?
There's a rule on my panel where you have to believe in truth to talk to me.
Can I explain you why there is no truth?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you for allowing me the time.
I wish you well. I mean, if you don't believe in truth, then don't request to come up because I don't want to talk to you. There's no point in talking to someone who doesn't believe in truth. Welcome. Did you repent and become a Christian?
No, not yet.
Bro. Why? You're gonna, if you pass away, you'll be eternally separated from God. You don't want that to happen, dude.
Yes, I would want that to happen.
Oh my gosh. You have no idea what you're talking about.
No, I do.
Grow up. Be an adult.
I know exactly what I'm talking about.
No, you don't. God is love, bro. He's peace and joy. You're going to regret. You're gonna regret this. Don't regret this. Make the right choice, dude. What's life good for you? What did you want to talk about?
I guarantee you I won't regret it.
Did you want to tell me how much you hate God, or what did you want to say?
No, I don't hate God.
Oh, sure you don't.
Well, not any more than I hate like Darth Vader or Voldemort or people like that, you know?
It's very funny. Funny you believe in comedy, but there's no scientific evidence for it.
There's no scientific evidence of comedy?
Right, but yet you believe in it. Because you just made it's questionable whether that joke was It was borderline a joke.
It wasn't a joke. It was just a statement of fact.
Oh my god. Okay, so what did you want to say?
I reject the first premise of tag.
Okay, so then what do you mean by you reject it? Do you have an ultimate authority that's not my ultimate authority or ultimate reality?
No, I don't.
Okay, so what's your defeater or your undercutter?
You have yet to substantiate it.
It we substantiate it by comparing our models of reality. So I believe God is ultimate reality. What do you think is ultimate reality?
I don't think there is an ultimate reality.
Okay, so as a consequence of that position, knowledge is impossible.
No,
Therefore,
it's not impossible. Absolute knowledge is impossible, but knowledge is not impossible.
well, anything would be possible in your position, so you couldn't know anything.
You couldn't know anything for certain, sure.
No, you couldn't know anything. It's not about certainty, sir.
How are you defining knowledge?
Sir, if you lived in a world where there was no limit on anything, such that anything was possible, could we have knowledge in that type of world?
I don't know how you're defining knowledge, so I can't answer that question.
Knowledge
How are
is
you defining knowledge?
knowledge is a psychological state with like a justificatory path to the state of affairs in an actual external world.
Then yes, you could have knowledge in that world.
No, you can't, sir.
You can.
No, you can't, sir.
Why not?
If anything is possible and there's no limits on the states of affairs, then like as soon as you make a claim about that state of affairs, the state of affairs could completely change properties.
Why are you saying there's no limits? I don't. Where are you getting that from?
When I ask you what's ultimate reality and you say, I don't know, you're being honest, but the problem is now there's no reason to think there's a limitation to states of affairs in your system. Because ultimate reality is that which limits the states of affairs. Now that you have no limit to your states of affairs and anything is possible, now we couldn't say we know things because like if we had contradictory opinions, it's possible we're both correct. It destroys intelligibility. So your model of reality doesn't work. It's self-defeating, self-refuting, self-stultifying, a self-referential performative contradiction.
Okay, well then I would hold logic as my ultimate authority.
Yeah, but that doesn't work because logic isn't single, it's a plurality. It's also an abstraction. Well, then you'd have multiple ultimate authorities. You can't have multiple ultimate authorities because once again, that leads to contradiction.
How is logic plural?
There's 3 laws of logic.
Yeah, but they're all essentially the same, right?
No, they're not essentially the same. So you'd have
essentially
multiple
they are.
You can't have it's called the laws.
I'm aware of what they're called. And it's a convention.
Logic.
I know.
It's a plurality.
They're a convention.
Plural. Because it's a plurality, that would be you'd have multiple ultimate authorities. If you have multiple ultimate authorities,
even still, this is a moot point.
That's a contradiction.
Okay, this is a moot point because I don't hold the laws of logic as my ultimate authority. I hold logic as my ultimate authority. Logic is not plural.
Okay, I don't know. I think we should just move on. You're being emotional now.
I'm not being emotional.
You are.
You're trying to force a plurality onto a singular. I don't hold the laws of logic as my ultimate. I hold logic as my ultimate.
Look, I commend you for your deception and your desire for atheism to be true. It's just unfortunately you can't give me a substantive response because atheism is a house of cards and it's just nonsense. So, yeah, that sucks to be you, man. But thanks for coming, man, and I wish you well. And hopefully you repent and have a rational position from which you can argue in the future. Thanks.
So you can't have an argument? You have to kick people that disagree with you?
No, you can disagree with me. It's just you're not dealing with what I'm presenting to you. You're ignoring what I'm presenting to you. Hey, Army, do you want to make a quick comment? Because I wanted to. Someone else was waiting longer, but if you want to make a real quick comment, I figure you can come first.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, just for the other atheists in the chat that is agreeing with this dude, the laws of logic are inside of logic. You cannot hold to just logic without holding to the laws. There are 3 laws of logic, people. The law of identity, the law of excluded mental, and the law of non-contradiction. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot, no human on earth can hold to the laws of logic and not logic. That makes 0 sense. It is irrational, but all right, good job, P-Bars, man. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that guy's like, I don't know what that guy was saying. Like, first, there's so many
Hello?
reasons why that's not an answer to the question. It's not even funny. It's just such nonsense. Welcome, Musu.
Yes. Um, so do you pray?
Yeah, I pray with my cat. I have a Christian kitty.
Isn't prayer just talking to yourself?
No, it's when you talk to God and God listens to what you say. Oh, you're laughing at me?
You think God is in the room with you when he's praying.
Hell yeah. God's everywhere.
No, he's not. He's in
Yeah,
your
he is.
head.
He's imminent.
That is actually the craziest thing I've heard.
Atheism is crazy. Why would you think there's no God? What's the reason to think that's true?
Because I've never seen a God. There's nothing that proves that he's real.
Yeah, but that's just a restatement of your position. You have no evidence to think that's true. You just have blind faith in atheism. Why
Isn't
should
that
I
what you
laugh
have
at
in
you?
God?
What?
Isn't that what you have in God?
No, I can objectively prove the Bible's true, Christianity's true.
Okay, so where did God come from? A creator always
God?
has to have another creator.
No. God is eternal. He's not created. He's absolute, self-contained, non-derivative, non-dependent. He secures all ontologies and epistemologies through his divine
Where did he come
providence.
from?
He doesn't come from anywhere. He has eternal, or the philosophical properties called aseity. He has aseity.
I've never seen a creator that doesn't have another creator. Like if you make um
I'm
a
not.
computer, someone else would have had to do something before that.
Yeah, but that's like a parts whole composition fallacy. Like, just because, like, in our experience, everything we create has a creator, it doesn't mean that, like, the whole has a creator, or like that God has a creator or something.
So God does not have a mother and father.
No, God is eternal. He's self-contained. He is not contingent upon anything. He does not depend upon anything. He's completely independent. He's completely free without limitation.
So why can't the universe be eternal when this imaginary God is?
Yeah, you can try and do that. Like, I have no problem if you want to say the universe is eternal, sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. The universe is eternal. And
Okay.
we've never not seen the world not here.
Right. But now you're going to have to explain things like how can science be possible, right? Because now you're gonna have to solve the problem of induction. So that move you make is fine, but then that it's a self-own, because now like science is impossible basically,
How is science impossible?
because science.
Science is the most accurate way to gain knowledge in 2024.
Yeah, and God is necessarily, the Bible's necessarily true for science to be possible, because the type of world that you're trying to propose, a world without a God, this Christian God, science will be impossible in that world. We know that science is possible, therefore the Christian God must be true. It's that simple.
Explain how.
Because science can't prove the foundations of science, like it can't prove the laws of logic. If the laws of logic aren't true, then science can't function. So science can't prove its own foundations. It requires God to prove the laws of logic or justify the laws of logic and the uniformity of nature, so you can do science. Science doesn't get off the ground.
So you think God created us?
Yeah, I think it's necessary that God created the world, and you can't rationally deny that.
There's nothing that suggests that we were created or we were made or something. Nothing in this world. From what I know, my mother and father had sex and we came into fruition. So I don't know why you're making up this claim that someone created us. I've never seen someone that has been
I mean,
born
you just ignore it
outside of biological life.
because it's the type of world that we experience. God is necessary for that experience. Without God, we wouldn't be able to have this experience. Everything you experience is evidence of God, because implicitly God is necessary for each of those experiences. Experience is impossible without God.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. Because certain things have to be true for you to have an intelligible experience. And you wouldn't be able to explain like what you are, what the world is, how you're connected, what logic is, how you can use logic, uh how would you couldn't explain like math?
We made up math. Math is man-made.
No.
God, we don't need God for that.
Even if math is man-made, it's still this concept that maps onto reality. How is it that our concepts can map onto reality? You have to explain
Because
that.
we
You need
use science to study the world.
No, you need something that can connect the concept to the real world. So that requires a God. It requires a unifying principle.
No, it doesn't. You just made that up.
I'm not making it up. You just don't know. You're just low information. You don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so where's heaven?
Heaven is in your heart.
In my heart. So if I open up my
Yes.
heart and cut myself, I'll see heaven in my heart.
Have you ever had a cheesecake with a coffee? That's
No,
heaven. And watch the sunrise? That's heaven.
no.
Like, what about when you look at the stars at night and they're so beautiful? That beauty, that's a glimpse of heaven.
That's something I can go up in the sky and see. I don't need to die to go see the stars. I can see it in my reality.
Yeah, I'm
That is the absolute truth.
well, I don't know. It's you're a tough nut to crack, but I hope you'll understand that Christianity is the truth someday.
You can keep on wishing, but no,
All
there is
right.
no God.
Well, I got other people waiting, so I was gonna move on to someone else. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right. I wish you well. Thanks for coming in.
Hmm.
Welcome, guest.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. All right. So I guess, I have a few things with the transcendental argument for God. My first, and this is just like a personal, dislike of it is that you're presupposing to be true the ultimate skeptic argument, which is that, like you just said in the previous caller, we can't fundamentally believe our own experience. It's not self-justifying, which is like an extremely skeptical position to take, and it makes anybody who uses this argument pretty much an extreme, the ultimate skeptic. No.
I'm saying there's a difference between how we perceive the world and how the world actually it is, and it just doesn't follow that because you perceive something that it's there in an external physical world.
Well, how about then saying that the laws of logic can't be justified on their own, and therefore God must justify them? Like, are we really saying that we can't agree that like 1 + 1 = 2, or that if A then B and A then you get B?
Yeah, because you need identity for those things to be true, and for
What's
identity,
identity?
like a thing has a certain set of properties, and it maintains those properties. Like one is not two, right? One has different
Oh, like
properties or
the law
attributes.
of identity, like A = A.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, can we really not like agree that A = A without having to justify it externally?
No, you have to provide a metaphysical justification for how could you know that that's the case, that's true. What would make that true?
Yeah, it's very similar to asking like, how do you know that 1 + 1 = 2? It's because you see it around you, right? You take one object, you take a second object, and then you have them together, and it makes two objects. It's like the the justification is inherent in like your experience and your surroundings. So if we can't agree that that's true without having to rely on some external justification, to me that is kind of crazy, honestly.
Yeah, so you're not a Christian, right?
No.
We disagree over what is possible and impossible in the world. Okay.
Okay.
So then that's where we have to argue or debate. And the thing that determines possibilities is ultimate reality. Ultimate reality is that which in the system that dictates what is, what can, what cannot be. It determines what's possible, what's impossible.
Okay.
Your position is going to be that like you don't know what I'm going to say that ultimate reality is God, and you're going to say, well, I don't know what ultimate reality is, but there's entailments from taking that position, and one of those entailments is that now anything is possible because there's no reason to think that there's like a limit on something that it's limited to these properties that it's going to maintain this identity.
Well, no, I would hold that the laws of logic are like unchangeable.
It doesn't matter what you like hold your position, right? Like that's irrelevant.
Okay, how so?
Well, it's my position that God exists.
Okay.
Does that make it true?
Oh, you're saying like are the laws of logic objectively true?
I'm saying, yeah. What would be the metaphysical justification that those laws are true? What would make them true?
Okay. Yeah, like we're just gonna disagree on whether they require external justification. And okay, but so that's just one, I guess, like thing. Another thing is
You
that
can't, dude.
yeah,
We're in a debate. You have to give reasons for why you think things are true. We can't.
I guess
You can't just go, well, I disagree with that. Well, then you're not debating. You're just saying, no, I'm just refusing to debate. That's all you're saying. That's not a valid move in a debate. You have to provide a reason. Look, what if you ask me why are the laws of logic true, or like what makes the laws of logic true, I'm going to say God. You're going to say I don't know, or like you just try to pull this move of I don't think I need to make, I disagree that I have to say why they're true. They can just be true. Maybe in my fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess really my like point is that requiring justification for them makes one who requires justification for them like the ultimate skeptic.
Yeah,
Does that make
so
sense?
my argument is an anti-skeptical argument.
Yeah, but it requires holding skepticism as a premise.
I'm saying you can't be skeptical of ultimate reality because it entails absurdity.
But aren't you holding like skepticism as your premise?
As my premise, I'm saying that if you reject the conclusion of the argument, you are reduced to radical skepticism. So you have to
But
either be a Christian or embrace radical skepticism. It's the dilemma that's presented to you in the challenge.
and what I'm saying that the only reason that logic needs a justification is if you have a premise of radical skepticism.
No, how would you defeat skepticism?
By the way most people do, which is by saying that you can trust your senses.
That's just ignoring it. That's not defeating it. I can defeat skepticism because there's an all-knowing God that reveals information to me. So I get out of skepticism. You have no
I
way out
know,
of skepticism.
but
Epistemology is
you've
about
just
defeating
defined. I mean,
epistemology. The
go
whole
ahead.
point of epistemology is to defeat skepticism. So if your epistemology can't defeat skepticism, then you have to embrace a system. You have to embrace radical skepticism
But in order to
or be a
defeat
Christian.
but in order to defeat skepticism, you have to start somewhere, right? And it feels like you're playing like a definitional game rather than making right. Like, okay, fair enough. I'll
It's not a
grant.
fucking definitional game, dipshit. The whole point
Okay,
of
you're getting.
epistemology is to
Go ahead.
defeat skepticism. Epistemology is defeating skepticism. Epistemology, that's what it is. It's the whole purpose is to defeat skepticism. I'm not inventing some criteria because I'm a
God,
Christian. You piece
you're
of crap.
you're defining like what you would like to define to beat skepticism, right? Like
I
God.
can't. You are infuriating. This is such a snake-like move, what you're doing here. This is not a fair representation of reality. You are a deceiver. Your father, the father of lies, the devil, is behind you. You know what I'm saying? So I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to
So I
move
mean,
on.
this right here, just like
I wish you well, but like I can't talk to you. You're infuriating. The
this
way
just
you're lying to me, it's infuriating. Unbelievable. The father of lies. It's what they do. So there are two fundamentally different ways to understand the world: intentional and accidental. An intentional world is one that comes about on purpose and for a purpose. It is a world that is what it is because someone intended for it to be that way. In contrast, an accidental world is one that comes about by pure chance, for no purpose and for no reason. It is a world that is what it is by accident. All worldviews are at bottom either intentional or accidental, right? All worldviews are either intentional or accidental. These two kinds of worldviews describe very different worlds. They tell different stories about how the world came to be, about the nature of the world, and about the nature of man. They give different accounts regarding man's relationship to the world and how the world can be known by man. These two accounts of man's knowledge present us with two very different epistemological stories. The first story is an epistemology in which man is aided. It is an epistemology that is grounded not by man, but by someone who is in a position to know. It is grounded by God. It is a theonomous epistemology. The second story is of an epistemology in which man is not aided, an epistemology that is grounded in man and by man. That is an autonomous epistemology. As we look at these two stories, we will make a disquieting discovery. We will find that the second story is not true. For the history of epistemology demonstrates that man, unaided, has not and cannot attain a foundation on which to base a theory of knowledge. We will see that any theory of knowledge that originates solely from man must be characterized as arbitrary, ambiguous, and incoherent. But if man has no coherent theory of knowledge, then his beliefs are without warrant. And if his beliefs are without warrant, then he can make no claim to be in possession of knowledge. If, however, the story of autonomous epistemology is not true, we will have to make a choice. We will either have to accept the lesson of history and resign ourselves to utter skepticism and ignorance, or we will have to accept our first story and seek aid as to the foundation of epistemology. But we will need to seek aid from someone who does not share our limitations. We will need aid from someone who does not share our struggle to understand what the world is, what he himself is, and how he and the world are epistemically related. We will need aid from someone who is not also entangled with the paradox of providing a justification criterion for his justification criterion. We will need aid from someone who is in a position to know. He is in a position to know because he does not stand on our side of the world, but stands in back of it. We will need aid from God. Straight up. Welcome, James.
So was that a preface or what was that?
That's the introduction to the paper, The Contingency of Knowledge and Revelatory Theism.
Ooh, I've heard that title somewhere before. Okay. I guess I should state I stand as, I know it says atheist or agnostic, but I guess the correct or at least in my view, I see everyone as agnostic. It's just whether or not you depict yourself as a theist or atheist. So I'd say atheist agnostic, but I don't know if oh boy, where do I start? So I'm assuming you're somewhere under the Catholic/Christian faith, maybe?
I am a Christian, correct.
Okay, so I was raised Catholic, so so anyway, I was raised Catholic, so man, it's been a while since I've been to church, but I have been read the Bible many times, and I've been told the stories of Mary and did all the celebrations and stuff like that, but probably over some period of time, I would say maybe around the age of like 9 or 10 is when like I don't think I really became all that much like faithful. And really my reasoning behind it is, well, it started with this whole like philosophy perspective of like religion wasn't really until later, but it really comes to a point of like what are how do I put this? It seemed a little bit immoral, I guess you could say, religion in a sense that it felt kind of unfair trying to praise a God where where in the Bible that you're supposed to be following and reading, there's text, which I think a lot of the text came from Deuteronomy and Genesis, where there was a lot of stuff in there that I wasn't really a big fan of, like people of people who were born with imperfections and stuff like that can't make it to the lands of the heaven, and also, not, well, I know in different books it changes, but like not being able to eat shrimp and like pig, but then there's like another in Bible where it says like God made it like so where it's just to eat shrimp and pork and shit like that. So there's some inconsistencies there. I have like 4 different Bibles, like 2 of them are like the King James Bible. So not only and there's different denominations as well, so that also makes it a little bit more inconsistent. Now again, I'm not trying to justify going to another religion, but
Well, it's not actually inconsistent. Okay, so like, are you American?
yeah, I'm American.
Okay, so like in the Wild West, if you stole someone's horse, that was punishable by unaliving.
Right. I'm not familiar with that, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, that seems like unreasonable, right? Like in modern times, if someone stole a horse, to unalive them as a punishment in 2024, that would be like not cool, right? Like that's not a fair play.
Right.
But why is that? Why that difference, right? It's because moral laws is a necessity of like the organization of a human society, how we can, it's like there's these conducts that we need to agree on to have a society, and those are dependent on circumstance. Okay, so like in the Wild West, if someone stole your horse, that could cause, losing your horse could either cause you like financial destitution because you depended on that horse for your livelihood.
Right.
You could be totally financially ruined. And back then they didn't have like social welfare programs, right? So you're completely screwed with no one to help you in that type of situation. So it's a worse thing. And then also, if someone stole your horse and you had no transportation and you were like caught somewhere, it would increase the likelihood that you could get hurt. Like, horses provide like a self-defense from bears or wolves, and they all, because you can escape them, run away from them, and also you could die from like exposure. Like you could be so far from civilization that you would need a horse to so like stealing someone's horse has way dire consequences in the Wild West than it does in 2024, which is why there's more dire of a punishment. So this is what, like, the morals reflected in the Bible, the laws are going to reflect like an ancient world in an ancient time. And so they're going to seem weird to us. Like it seems weird to us that you would punish someone for stealing a horse so severely. It's going to be the same thing.
Sure.
We don't understand
what.
What?
I'm just saying, don't you think there should be, don't you think it'll make a little bit more sense if there was going to be a holy book that followed, or at least was a little bit more neutral on some or said times or how law should be judged? I think it's or not judged, should be constructed, because like there's a lot of stuff in there that still doesn't really resonate with me. And again, like it doesn't.
That's just because you're born in 2024. If you were born at that culture, you would understand why they lived like that. It would make perfect sense to you.
No, I totally understand that. I'm not going, but it still doesn't still justify why. It would make more sense if holy laws or theological law was more, I would say, general, rather than like, hey, this is going to be the method that we state in this book, and then if some rule is broken, use that method, or if this law is broken, which there's a lot of laws that we don't follow, again, that I'm pretty sure we're all breaking to some degree, that is probably stated in the Bible somewhere. I mean, one of them I can even say is the 10 Commandments, and one of them's not to covet your neighbor's wife. But like, there's a lot of things I do all the time that would fall under breaking that 10 Commandment. Like, again, I see someone driving a nice car, and I'm like, hey, I want a nice car too. I'm coveting my neighbor's item. I understand that it specifically said you're not to covet your neighbor's wife, but again, it's a general statement. I don't think it actually means coveting her specifically. And this is another problem that I even just imposed on myself, is interpretation matters the most, and in the interpretation between different groups of people and cultures is so important. And that's where you get the different denominations of like which Christian religion you're following, whether it's Orthodox Christian, Catholicism, like Roman Catholics, or being a Mormon, or being what are they called, like Jehovah's Witness, or Lutheranism. Like there's so many different ones. Now you have the problem which one are you going to pick? And they all have their own set of rules as well. Maybe some of them are more, there's an underlying.
I think you got a call. Thanks for the gifts, Jerusalem. That's a funny name. I feel like you're just kind of ignoring what I'm presenting, though. I'm explaining how, like, the laws and morals are going to be dependent upon circumstance, like economic circumstances or other circumstances. So of course they're going to like change throughout time. So I mean,
Again, I'm not trying to ignore it. I'm just saying, like, it would make more sense if laws that are but if the religion is the one establishing the law, it would be more general than what now it seems like pretty outdated.
yeah,
It's fair if the Bible is stating people who lived pre AC or 80 times. Sure, that's not my problem.
You're just ignoring what I said to you. Jerusalem, yeah, Darth should be back soon. I talked to him last night. Or the night
What did I ignore? My phone and like audio went out, so I'm probably missed
laws
something.
and morals, laws, customs, how we treat each other. Like this is a necessity of human life. And
Why is it a necessity though?
It's just a reality that we live our lives. It's based on how we treat each other is based on economic circumstances. Like if there was an apocalypse and the resources dried up, don't you think the way we treat each other would be a lot different? People would be fighting for survival.
Yeah, so then
right?
Well, yeah, an apocalypse
You can't
would
have
change exactly.
You couldn't have the same law in a world with a lot of resources than in a world with limited resources, right? In the ancient world, we're dealing with a place where there's limited resources. They don't have the technology we have today. We have abundance, right? We're in a position of abundant resources. Their economics are totally. Again, what?
How does that answer how God or you need religion to exist? I'm not sure where you're going with this. You're just saying economic perspective changes how humans treat each other. Yes, that's just an obvious.
You want a proof for why Christianity is true?
I don't need a proof. It's not that you can prove it. Nor you or I can prove whether God exists or not.
No, I can prove Christianity is true. It's easy as hell.
Go for it then.
Right. So to have knowledge of the world, to learn from our experience, certain things have to be the case, and one of those things is the Christian worldview, the claims of the Bible. So the Bible's necessarily true for knowledge, and you can't rationally deny that because you'd be denying knowledge.
What is necessarily true mean? I hear like theists like throw that out all the time. I don't know what that means. It doesn't really logically make sense.
It means that like for knowledge to be the case, for us to be able to learn from our experience, there has to be a certain type of world, right?
Sure.
Certain preconditions, like an apple tree is necessary for an apple, so we couldn't have an apple without an apple tree. So that's a necessary relationship. So the apple would be an indirect. If I only had an apple and I never observed an apple tree, I would have evidence of an apple tree because an apple itself would be an indirect evidence of an apple tree due to the necessary relationship.
Okay, then what do you say to a fruit that exists but without the tree or bush that it comes from, and that also happens to have any seeds?
Well, I'm saying knowledge. God is necessary for knowledge, so the fact that we have knowledge is an indirect evidence of God. Just like in the apple.
Why is God necessary for knowledge? I don't understand why that needs to be.
For us to have knowledge, we have to know like, sort of like what we are, what the world is, and the relationship between us and the world. Those things have to be known, and
how do you know that's the case for what is needed to be?
Well, if we don't know what the world, for example, let's say we don't know what reality is. Some philosophers think reality is mental substance. So, like the external world I'm referring to. Some people think the external world is a physical substance, right? And there's no way to determine who's correct because we don't have access to what the world actually is. We only have access to our perception of the world.
Yes, which is
And so-
pretty much a big foundation in physics.
So since we don't have access to what the world actually is, apart from God's revelation, you can never like speak about reality, right? You can never know reality because you never know what reality actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So God's revelation is necessary to know the world as it actually is, apart from just our perception of how the world is. So that's going to be necessary for knowledge.
I think
Otherwise,
you kind of answered what I was trying to say, though. I think you don't even realize it, but what you said is kind of the general consensus, I think, of how this entire conversation is going to go. And it's you don't know the answer to, like, again, I know I established myself as atheist, but like nor do even I like understand the like whether it's not a yes or no answer you're going to get out of any of these conversations. It's going to be an ongoing thing, but you can't really prove whether a God exists or not. I understand you put those like, subjective, like really.
you think you can prove anything?
Huh?
Can we prove anything at all?
No, not at all. Science can't even prove anything. The science is like, it's even something as objective as science is, right? Where you could pretty much burn every textbook, and within 1,000 years, whatever we can recollect as a evolving society, they will come back. The equations, the info will all come back the same. You can't really do that with religion. And the same thing. So what I'm saying is even science is not even as objective.
You can't argue. If you don't believe you can prove anything, you can't argue. The whole point of an argument is to prove something. So
no, not necessarily. No, not necessarily. Like, okay, well, no. The point of an argument is to persuade or convince. One of the two.
The debate's over.
What? No, not at all. I'm trying to tell you, you can't say you can prove God exists.
The debate's over. You lost the debate.
No, that's not how it goes. You can't just say that.
Sure. Because you're a demonstration of my proof, right? I'm saying that like only Christians can prove things, and if you reject that, you end up in a position like you where you can't prove anything, and you admitted that.
Well, how would you say no? Well, you can't prove it either. It's subjective to you that you can prove it. You think
you can't prove anything, so you can't really say that. So thanks for coming. I wish you well.
Well, what would you tell a Muslim then?
Exactly. What about Islam? They always do this because they can't defend their position. They go, well, what about Islam? The guy's not even a Muslim, right? But these people who aren't Muslims want to defend Islam. Why do you think that is? Why are these people that hate God, aren't Muslim, yet they want to defend Islam? Do you think they're going to be happy in a country where like throws them in jail for being atheist under Sharia law? Welcome, guest.
Hello.
So what did you think about that? That guy says he can't prove anything, but then he wants to argue with me. Does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because you can prove a lot of things. Like I don't know what he's trying to get at that you can't prove. Like science has proven a lot of things.
if what he's saying is true, wouldn't he be contradicting himself by then trying to like argue with me that he's like trying to prove that I can't prove something? Like, how does that make sense?
It's like there's no way to prove that God exists because we don't have any semblance of what he has done, and there's only anecdotal evidence that has been written down in a book for everyone to share. And because of the age of the book, it's like the game telephone. One person tells it to the next person, a little bit of it changes. And over the course of 4,000, 5,000 years, there's going to be a lot of change. It might not even be the same story.
No, there's been no change. It's like 98% accurate because we got like thousands of manuscripts across different time periods to compare the text to, and it's like very accurate. It's very peer-reviewed, very studied, so there's no issue with that. I don't think you can rationally deny God.
Also, again, it's really easy. So
how do you rationally deny God?
If you take somebody in power right? Let's say, I'm the king, right? I'm the one who had the most amount of money, the most amount of power. I was the strongest. I'm the one who, did something to help everybody else, so that everybody liked me. So then they decided that I'm going to be the one that's in charge because I made good decisions in the past and they did not. Then there's a rumble of some newcomers that are coming into our society, and they're starting to question my ability to rule because they were not there to witness what I did. So I'm going to say, you know what? My word goes, and this is why. There is a giant, scary monster that lives in that cave over there. And if you deny me, I will command him to come out and eat you. Now, they don't know that. But then let's say one day I have some of my soldiers and people who follow me hide in that cave and then come in and take out one of the people that had just shown up to try and denounce my ability to rule. And then all of a sudden, nobody knows how that person died.
Is
But
this about?
my account of saying there's a monster in that cave and it's going to get you. So
Is this
now
about?
everyone believes that.
Is this
So it's
about Dr. Fauci and the pandemic?
no. It's similar to that, but
Oh, okay.
this is like saying basically like one person in power a long time ago says that there's a boogeyman that's going to smite you for all that you do unless you do these things.
Oh, this is like Al Gore and climate change.
No.
Well, is that what the science does with climate change? Is there like there's this boogeyman and
So
gonna get you?
climate change is a fear tactic. I guess it would be similar. Because it's a fear tactic that's put in place for them to make money off of electric cars and all
To
this
change our behavior.
so-called green energy stuff. Yeah, exactly. So what we're seeing now is something that we have never been able to observe in documented human history as far as the weather goes. We've never seen any of this happen because we have recorded in archaeology, some differences in the surface layers that would describe, oh, well, this surface looks like what it does in Antarctica when it's completely frozen over. And it's like, well, then that must have been ice. That's what we know about that. So then we can sort of make predictions of what's going on. Right now, we're in a climate shift. We're not in a climate degradation. It's like greenhouse gases and stuff like that. It's accelerating it, yes, but this was going to happen either way.
Well,
And people like to blame it on greenhouse, like you having to go into do all this climate change stuff. We're not changing the climate. This happens throughout the history of the planet. It has been found that there has been changes in these areas at certain time periods as they are cataloged in the layers of sediment.
all right. Well, this kind of backfired on me a little bit because I was like, yeah. But
So
I was just making the point that like just because like sure religion was been used as like the state by propaganda in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not true because like the state will use science to fearmonger today, and it wouldn't.
yeah, but like with religion, that's the biggest one though, is that religion was used 100% to fearmonger people into following in line so that way they would not overthrow a person in charge.
But that
It's
doesn't
like
mean it's false.
it's like the Crusades.
It doesn't
So
mean it's false
with
though.
yeah, so before we even had a semblance of religion, before all of that, there was documentation that they found that somebody was in charge and they kept everyone underneath of them. The only way that could possibly happen is if those people were so dumb that they followed blindly, or they were afraid of something happening to them.
Well, but originally the government was against religion, and it tried to Christianity specifically, it tried to suppress Christianity, right?
Yeah.
So I think it didn't start out as like this way to like control people or fear monger, or it started out as this true thing, and people like truly believed it, because I think there was strong evidence. There must have been strong evidence at the time for people to believe it, because no one's just going to believe those claims of like Jesus being God and resurrecting without evidence. That would be crazy. No one's going to do that. So people must have had good reasons to believe it, and they believed it, and it spread, and people liked it, and then eventually the state kind of like used it for evil.
It's kind of like both ways. It's like you're gonna have somebody who doesn't like the, let's say doesn't like the king, and so then they're gonna start their own party in the shadows, their own little like resistance group, and then they're gonna say that this stuff happened because they're dealing with the same people, but there's always gonna be more people that have like-minded abilities like the king did, to have the foresight to know that, hey, if I make up this thing that's scary enough or is good enough, like, in either direction, it could be scary or good, that if I make this thing that says you will live eternally if you follow this,
See, I see
then
it.
the people are going to follow that.
I see it totally opposite. Like, let's say there was no Christianity, then it's like you would have no basis to. It'd be like might makes right. We'd have no basis to question the king. But it's because of Christianity, and there's this authority outside of man, that we can take this perspective due to our relationship with Christ. We have this perspective to go like, is the king correct? Right? Is the king doing what Christ wants? And so Christianity actually provides us a way to question authority, right? As opposed to like this method of like controlling people. It's actually a path toward it's a life that's like involves freedom and questioning the king.
Yeah, so it's similar to, you're kind of on the right track. So it's with Christianity, it was the king at the time. So Christianity was the largest religion at the time. During the Crusades, they were the boogeyman, and they told them that everybody else that wasn't Christian, that if they didn't follow what they believed, that the boogeyman was going to come and get them. So then somebody, whoever was in charge of, the party of knights that would, go and slaughter these people when they would not believe, would announce that we were sent by this person, our God.
But that didn't happen. They didn't force people by the sword to be Christian. People wanted to be Christian.
So there were people that wanted to be Christian, but then there were people who denounced Christianity and says, I do not want to be Christian, and they slaughtered them.
No, that didn't happen.
It did.
No.
There were millions of people.
Okay.
Millions.
No, you don't know what you're talking about. So Jesus says to like love your enemies, right? So it doesn't say to do. You can't do that stuff. That's not Christian.
It didn't matter because they were doing it in the name of their Lord. That was their excuse.
No, you don't know what you're talking about.
I do. The Crusades was one of the largest atrocities in human history.
If I say like, Jesus told me to do this horrible act, and then I do the horrible act, is that Christianity's fault just because I claimed that?
It would be, because that's the religion that you're following.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming. I'm looking to talk to rational, not emotional people. But maybe one day you'll stop hating Jesus and the truth, and you'll accept reality. So thanks for coming. I wish you well.
Yeah.
I hate it when people like that come up here and lie about Christianity. Christianity did not spread by the sword. Now, if he wants to say that Islam spread by the sword, I could agree with that. Christianity is about like love and forgiveness. Like, get real. Like, why do, like, literally this book is just about like love and forgiveness and people hate it. What does that tell you? What does it tell you about people? Not good things, that's what. They hate love and forgiveness. They want revenge, they want to hold grudges, they want to be haters. Anything but God. They'll literally believe any lie as long as the lie isn't God. Oh, I'm open-minded. I'll believe anything as long as it's not Christianity. Any kooky thing they'll believe. And then they'll go, oh, Christianity, it's too hard to believe the claims. Yeah, those claims are just too hard to believe, but I believe all these insane other claims. That's fine. I'm convinced of all these insane claims, but oh, Christianity, that's too much. Yeah, right. We know the truth. You just hate Jesus. That's it. So theonomous epistemology. So our first story goes like this. Once upon a time, there were those who believed that fundamental reality was one. This one, they believed, was personal, all-powerful, all-rational, and exceedingly creative. But they did not think this belief to be an arbitrary metaphysical speculation. Rather, it is their testimony that the one had revealed this to them. They believed this revelation was true because it explained a great many things. It explained the problem of the one and the many, because everything in the universe is what the one intended it to be. Nothing is what it is by chance. Consequently, every object in the universe is united, not by an infinitely improbable accident, but necessarily. Because the many particulars of man's experience all originate from the one, they are by definition related to one another. Consequently, man's philosophical and scientific descriptions of those relationships are not mere fictions, but are real and meaningful. Because the one is rational, logic has an absolute referent. And because rationality extends to everything the one has done, it is universal. The mind and matter are appropriate to one another. The categories of thought correspond to the categories of reality. Man's mental processes correspond to physical processes. Survival, science, and philosophy are possible. A thing in itself can be known. Because the one created man in his own image, man transcends the deterministic nexus of the material world. The human mind is not a mere physical object locked into the great machine of the universe, where thoughts are nothing more than brain states, the mere products of antecedent causes, neither true nor false. Man transcends nature and is related to it as a subject. Man transcends nature and is related to it as subject to object. Because the one regulates and orders his creation, nature is uniform and causality exists. Since the same causes bring the same effects, induction is possible and universal propositions can be formulated. And since universal propositions are a precondition to logical deductions can be made. Because the one first conceived the patterns or kinds after which all patterns are reading. Yeah, this is actually the a good when they ask for a defensive premise one. Just tell them this. I should just read this shit out to them. Yeah, okay, because the one, or God, right, first conceived the patterns or kinds after which all particular instantiations are created, universals have a referent and are real. Consequently, the classification and categorizing of man's experiences meaningful. Language and thought are therefore possible. Because the one's character constitutes an absolute criteria which is obligatory on all creatures and for which there are absolute consequences, morality has a referent. You will recognize this as the revelation and cosmology of the three great monotheistic religions. But we are not here concerned with whether or not these three is the true heir of that revelation. For that question is an in-house inquiry, which becomes relevant only after we have established the preconditional necessity of that revelation. So the idea is, like, first we establish that revelation is necessary, and then we can get into, like, is Islam true or Christianity true? But this story is not generally accepted today. It is rejected as a wild guess and a vain imagining. Knowledge cannot be gotten from God, whether he exists or not. Man himself must be the determiner of truth. Man is the measure of all things, as Protagoras said. Even if the above story is true, every part of it must be certified by passing the canon of man's autonomous epistemology. And so we must turn to the antithesis of this story. We must turn to the story of autonomous epistemology. The story starts, as do most philosophy texts, not with Adam, Abraham, or Moses, but with tales. Thales. I'll say, I like tales, sounds better. The story of autonomous epistemology begins on May 28th, 585 BC, at 6:13 in the evening. At least this is when Dr. Gordon Clark humorously suggests that philosophy began. It is one that the man who is generally recognized as the first philosopher, Thales, made the first prediction of a solar eclipse. Though men had recorded the movements of heavenly bodies for eons, Thales was the first to see in these movements a pattern, a common denominator by which all heavenly bodies moved. He was first to find a general law. He found unity in diversity. He reduced the many to one. But there are more things to unify in the universe than the motion of heavenly bodies. Thales proposed that the one element that makes up and unites every object in the universe is water. Water is the primordial stuff of which all reality is made. Now, what is important here is not Thales' answer, but the question he raised. What ultimately is everything? This started the great debate. Anaximenes said ultimate reality is air. Heraclitus said, on the other hand, ultimate reality is fire. Parmenides said they were both wrong. It is being. This debate over the nature of ultimate reality was the beginning of metaphysics, and arguments over metaphysics led to arguments about arguments, and the debate over what constituted a good argument was the beginning of epistemology. What was needed was a theory of knowledge by which one could know that a given proposition was true. Now, the pre-Socratics have exemplified a few epistemological propensities that have continued throughout history. Some, such as Parmenides, felt that the best arguments are obtained through reason. For example, if all men are mortal, and if Socrates is a man, then one can reason that Socrates is mortal, and necessarily so. The appeal to these thinkers is certainty. If reason clearly dictates something and experience suggests something else, then there is a problem with experience. Reason is believing. On the other hand, some, such as Democritus, felt that the best arguments are obtained through experience. Seeing is believing. The appeal to these thinkers is the concreteness of their experience. If reason indicates something other than the dictates of observation, then you know something is wrong with your reasoning. In time, these propensities and this debate resolved itself into two primary rival theories of knowledge that are still with us today: rationalism and empiricism. Rationalism was developed by Plato and hit its high watermark with the father of modern philosophy, René Descartes. Empiricism was developed by Plato's student, Aristotle, and reached its modern expression in John Locke. Oh, welcome.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you good.
Okay, cool. I appreciate you accepting my request to join. So yeah, I really just want to start off with one point. I guess I'm an atheist. I really just want to start off with one argument. So the world is filled with horrible, awful things. You know, slavery's happened, the Holocaust has happened, babies get cancer. You know, there's still slavery that exists today in the world. And when non-believers say stuff like, you know, well, if God is good, why does all this bad stuff happen? You know, believers will always go to something like, well, God works in mysterious ways, or God has a greater plan. Well, if God is all powerful, all loving, and all knowing, then why couldn't he achieve this plan without inflicting pain and suffering upon millions and millions of people? Because he's all powerful and he's all loving, so that means he could enact this greater plan he has without inflicting pain and suffering upon millions. So why would I want to worship a God that doesn't care to help out his creation or to execute his greater plan without inflicting this level of torment upon the world?
Well, I mean, I think the problem of evil is a very serious problem, because I think we're in this reality and we experience evil, and so our worldviews have to account and be able to make sense of evil. And I think that, like, only the Christian worldview can really make sense of evil. So if you deny Christianity, you couldn't really say that someone who I don't know, does harm to another person, you couldn't really say that person was evil, because there's no like standard for evil. So I think Christianity is important as like a moral compass or standard to say things are right and wrong in the first place. And secondly, I would say that like God, you know, it was God's plan. He's got a plan of redemption that temporally he's going to allow the good, the bad, and ugly to occur over the course of human history, for there to be this ultimate good. Do we know why he does this? We can tell you specifically why, because like I'm not God, but God has a morally sufficient reason for allowing this bad things to happen.
But my whole point is, if God is all powerful, all loving, and all knowing, then he could execute this greater plan he has without all of the pain and suffering and torment and
But he did.
slavery that goes on in this world. So
He did.
that leaves us with really only two or three options. Either God is evil and he wants it this way, he doesn't really care to change anything, or he's not all powerful and he can't fix it.
And the story of
So
the
why
Bible,
would I want to worship any of those gods?
it's just not the God of the God in the Bible made everything good. The death and the suffering entered the world when humans rebelled. So it's unnatural. It's not God's plan to have death and suffering, right? He did make it the way you're like, why didn't he make it this way? That's how he made it. and then we rebelled against God, and it was a consequence of our rebellion. Is there's this we're experiencing temporal judgment. There's a time for a limited amount of time. God will let unpleasant things happen, but it's a part of His plan to redeem us, basically, and He's going to fix everything and make it good. So it's not always going to be like this. He's going to fix it. So it's not really a big deal.
So that's another thing I want to touch on. You say that, we, humanity or man, redeemed or rebelled against God. Well, if God is all knowing and then He intentionally put Adam and Eve in the garden knowing that Eve was going to eat the apple and we were going to rebel against Him, so why did He do it that way? Only to then, He knew He was going to send His own son to die. That's another thing. He intentionally sent His own son to be tortured on the cross when He could have just forgiven us in the first place. But for some reason, He just requires a blood sacrifice of His own son. He can't just forgive us of the sin of eating an apple. No, He has to torture His own son in order to forgive us all. How does that make Him loving and forgiving?
Because if we don't pay the debt for our sin, then God's not just. So if Jesus doesn't sacrifice Himself, then our God wouldn't be just. And if He punishes us and doesn't sacrifice Jesus, then He wouldn't be merciful. So Jesus is necessary as an expression of God's justice and His mercy. And just because God knows that Eve is going to be tempted and eat from the tree, that doesn't mean that He causes her to do that, right? So a parent has children knowing that the children were going to suffer, right? But you still have children, right? Because there's a greater good. Despite your child suffering, they'll still hopefully have an enjoyable, happy life, right? Even though,
parents can't. God is supposed to be all powerful. Parents can only control their kid's life up to a certain point. Once they get into middle school and high school, especially, they start making their own decisions about how they're going to live their life. So, that's not really a fair comparison about God creating the universe.
Well, it's not really fair for you to not mention that God is constantly interacting with us and trying to save us from slavery. He's trying to save us from sin. Constantly, He's trying to help us. He wants what's best for us.
He didn't seem to be in a hurry to save all the black people from slavery. It took Him about 200 years to get around to that, or however long it was. But that's just part of the greater plan, I guess.
What do you think about Frederick Douglass?
I don't know who that is. I think that was one of the Civil War people or somewhere way back then.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about the history in the war and stuff like that. To be completely honest,
why, that would make sense to for you to comment on the situation since you don't know much about it.
Why do I need to know a lot about history to comment that slavery happened and it was bad?
Well,
I'm not a World War II historian.
75% of those slaves became Christians.
And they were singing in the cotton fields, praying for God to free them. And He finally got around to it after several of them have been, tortured, separated from their family, raped, all that horrible stuff.
Can you not say things that are going to get me banned, please?
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get you banned.
So Frederick Douglass, right, he was born into unimaginable suffering of forced labor, stripped of his identity, dignity, and freedom. Yet even in the darkest days of his bondage, he found hope in the teachings of Christianity. Frederick Douglass's faith was not merely a set of doctrines, but it was a lifeline that sustained him when all else seemed lost. Imagine the horrors of being treated as property, denied your humanity, and brutally punished for seeking even the smallest glimpse of freedom. Douglass knew these horrors firsthand, and yet, through his Christian faith, he found a deep sense of purpose and worth, believing that he, like all people, was made in the image of God and worthy of freedom. Isn't that amazing?
So if you find some sort of meaning or purpose in religion, I don't really have a problem with it. If somehow you feel it improves your life, I don't have any, ill will against you. I have just never felt any sort of connection. And furthermore, even if I did, that doesn't mean there's a God. Because people have experiences all the time. None of that would hold up in a court of law. None of that would count as evidence. And kind of my next point I want to get into is, in the Bible, there are just flat out scientific inaccuracies. So it says Jesus walked on water, turned water into wine. Jesus is a zombie. He died and came back to life. I mean, you either believe in magic or you don't. And why should I believe in a 7,000-year-old book that basically says magic is real?
Because it's necessary for science to be possible in the first place. So if you deny the book, then that would make science impossible. Do you think science is possible?
Well, of course science is possible, but
So
the Bible existing doesn't. The Bible
You think
existing doesn't.
Since the Bible is necessarily true for science to be possible, then you already believe in the claims of the Bible, but you're just not willing to admit it because you hate God or something, or you hate the truth.
No, I don't.
think you should
I don't hate God. I'm just trying to express my views.
Then why are you denying? Why are you believing in science but denying what's necessary for science to be possible? If you don't hate God,
Because the Bible is 100% not necessary for science.
can science prove science is true?
Well, the way science works is, you have a hypothesis.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear this. Can science prove science is true?
I don't know what you mean by that. I'm trying to explain how it works.
I know how science works. I'm not asking how science works. I'm asking if science can prove that science is true. You should say no.
Evidence can prove that science is true. Evidence can prove that a specific idea, a specific scientific idea is true. Science is that makes no sense. Science can prove science is true.
The Bible proves science is true.
I don't believe it does.
Well, you don't know what you're talking about. You're low information.
Science
I'm here
says
to
that
educate
people
you.
don't come
You don't know
back to
what you're talking
life.
about. You're low information. I'm here to educate you.
Science says that people don't walk on water. Science says people cannot turn water into
Science
wine.
relies on the uniformity of nature. You know what that is?
You mean like the laws of nature and how the universe generally works?
That the future resembles the past. That principle. It's a principle of induction that the future resembles the past.
That sounds like some sort of cult belief. I don't believe that.
It's literally the foundational belief to all scientific experimentation.
The future represents the past. I had never heard that.
The future resembles the past. Like, if I drop a pen, it falls to the ground. And you're making a lot of clicking noises.
Sorry, I'm clicking at work.
If I drop a pen, it falls to the ground. So if in the future, when I drop a pen, it falls to the ground, that's the uniformity of nature. The future resembles the past.
So what you're referring to is we have seen evidence all throughout our existence that the earth has gravity. And when something falls from a high place, it pulls it to the ground. So we expect that to happen in the future.
Yeah, we're not talking about gravity. We're talking about uniformity of nature. The future resembles the past. Okay, so there's no.
You gave an example of a pin falling to the ground. That's gravity.
There's more. There's more. I could say there's the toothbrush evidence. The toothpaste proof for God. When you squeeze your toothpaste container, you expect the toothpaste to come out and onto the brush. That's believing that the future will resemble the past. So you wouldn't have a justification for that belief, and a justification for that belief is necessary to make science possible.
All you're explaining is that we have evidence for these things happening. We have never seen them not happen, so we expect them to happen until we find evidence of the contrary.
Are you listening to what I'm saying to you? We do not have proof that the future resembles the past, yet we have to believe the future resembles the past to do science. So we need to prove the future resembles the past to do science. We can't empirically prove it. We can't rationally prove it. Only Christian revelation can justify that proposition. So to think science is possible is to believe Christian revelation, and there's no escape to this argument. You can't get out of it.
So what does science have to do with the Christian revelation? The Christian revelation is a man in the sky comes back to life, and that has. And by
You're
the way,
ignoring
people
what
have.
You're getting emotional. You're being emotional. Let's try to be logical. Focus on what I'm presenting to you. Focus.
I am not emotional.
Well, you're being emotional.
Explain your argument again.
The future resembles the past. Needs to be justified. There's no secular way to justify it. Only revelatory Christian theism can justify that proposition. If the proposition is not justified, science is impossible. Therefore, Christian revelatory theism is necessary for science. It's locked down. You're done. Game over.
Dude, you're arguing for a book that says magic is real. Why don't you believe in Santa
Dude, you're
Claus?
being emotional. Dude, deal with the argument. Stop being emotional. What's your response to the argument? Do you have a defeater?
That argument is ridiculous and it doesn't make sense. How about this?
That's not a defeater to the argument. That's an emotional response. Are you just an irrational atheist, being that you're just a teenager rebelling against God?
You're the person arguing for a book that says magic is real.
You're being emotional. I presented a logical argument. You're being emotional.
I have not raised my voice once. How am I being emotional?
Thank you for coming. I wish you well.
Here, I have one last point, and then I'll hop off. Is that okay?
No, it's not okay. Tired of your nonsense. I let you say enough. I let you lie enough.
How's it going, man?
It's going well. These atheists are very emotional.
Okay. I just would like to know a bit about your background in your religion. Is that all right if I ask a few questions?
I guess.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you believe in the God described in the Bible.
Yeah.
You are a Christian.
Sure. Yeah.
Of what nature of Christian? Are you Catholic? Are you evangelical? Are you?
I'd say I'm non-denominational.
Okay, so you just read on your own, and you've chosen to believe the words described in the Bible and the events described in the Bible.
I'm studying the Bible, yeah, and
sweet.
Maybe I'll pick a denomination someday.
Okay. By what means did you come to understand that the events described in the Bible were in fact true? How did you determine that they were true?
A transcendental argument for God.
The transcendental argument. Okay. Can you explain your understanding of the transcendental argument for me?
Sure. So the idea is data can fit multiple paradigms. There's a problem in science called the underdetermination of data. So a fossil can't tell us hi, I'm a fossil and I'm 2 million years old. It requires an interpretive scheme to interpret what the fossil means.
Right. We have to date the fossil by determining how much radiation has left the fossil or how much carbon is present in the fossil.
That's based on an interpretive scheme, right? But there's competing interpretive schemes, right? And then the question is going to be which interpretive scheme is correct, because the data can fit multiple interpretive schemes and the data is going to change meaning based on interpretive schemes.
Okay.
And so we argue with that in mind, we argue Christianity or the Bible as an interpretive scheme, so that the propositions in the Bible represent a worldview, a model of reality, an interpretive scheme.
Okay, I can understand that it represents a model for understanding the world.
Right.
But I still have yet to come to grips with how you have decided that the events such as a worldwide flood that is described in the Bible are actually true.
Right. So we argue it as a model.
Okay.
So I compare the model of viewing the world through the Christian lens versus any other lens. And I'm going to say that the Christian model is necessary to make sense of facts, that facts would be unintelligible if Christianity was false.
Okay, in what way? Like, let's say you were talking with the last guy about the dropping of the pen, like gravity. You know, how is Christianity necessary for us to come to an understanding of gravity and how it works?
Right. So it's necessary for science itself. Any scientific experiment.
Yeah, how so?
Scientific experiments rely on the uniformity of nature, which is the idea that the future will resemble the past, so you can get repeatable results, the same results. And so we have to justify the proposition the future will resemble the past. Well, this is called the problem of induction. It's a huge problem in science, but they don't teach you about it because they want to indoctrinate you to think that like science is the truth and religion's stupid. And so they don't teach you this. Exactly. They don't teach you these criticisms of science. So Bertrand Russell, who's a atheist, he'll say science is impossible if we don't solve the problem of induction, and only the Bible can solve the problem of induction. So it's that simple.
Okay, so if you're saying that, hold on, let me see if I'm understanding you correctly. Is you're saying science in itself, because you don't think that the past and the future are always going to behave the same, or that nature isn't inherently uniform and that it has change to it, that because science relies on things like being able to redo experiments and get the same results, that science is therefore flawed? Because we get our understanding of uniformity.
No. If you believe something, you have to have a reason to think it's true, like evidence.
Yeah. Like what?
So
Okay,
science relies on this belief, and there's no evidence for the belief. That's the point. So you need evidence to believe this to justify any scientific experiment.
Well, science is on a experiment by experiment basis. It's not just like one overarching branch. So if
science needs this proposition to be justified to make science possible. Only Christian revelatory theism can justify the proposition. That's it. There's no way out.
What do you mean?
Done. You're
what
done.
Do you mean?
You need to justify to make science possible. You need to justify the proposition the future resembles the past. You cannot rationally justify it because it's not logically necessary. You can't empirically justify it because that would be begging the question. The only way to justify the proposition and make science possible is with God's revelation in the Bible. If you deny that, you deny science.
So when we do an experiment that proves the rate at which gravity
There's no way out of this. You can't argue out of this.
No, I'm not trying to argue out of it. I'm trying to understand your position, my friend. Okay, so if we do an experiment that helps us come to an understanding of what rate gravity affects an object, at what rate does gravity affect an object? And we can repeat that experiment multiple times and get the same results. Then for our purpose of our understanding of the world, at least on our planet, then that theory of gravity is a working model of gravity.
And that's only possible.
I fail to see how God is necessary to perform that experiment.
That can only be possible if there's a God, because God is the only justification for the uniformity of nature.
Please,
because you're relying on the uniformity of nature to do the experiment. So if there's no justification for the uniformity of nature, since this experiment relies on that, there's no experiment without the justification for the uniformity of nature. So science isn't possible unless you believe the Bible. There's no way out of this. You can't argue out of it. You're done.
Listen, bro.
You're cooked. It's
all
over.
I'm trying to wonder is...
It's over. Tap, dude. Tap.
How does the Bible... No, I won't. How does the Bible...
You're being emotional.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. You're emotional. You're a baby.
Can you tell me how you know that the Bible demonstrates the uniformity of nature and therefore proves science? What means did you come to understand that?
You're literally just ignoring what I'm telling you. So thanks for coming. You're just another emotional atheist who refuses to listen to me. Like, how many times is he just going to keep asking the question over and over again? I explained this to him like how many times? What is wrong with these people? Where do they grow these people? They just do not care about rationality. They do not care about logic. It's pure like, well, I want to believe God isn't real. Yeah, but have you considered what if I want to believe atheism is true? I mean, seriously, this is like the best that they have. I just want to believe it's true, guy. Bro, it's dude, like do they not realize how irrational they are? They're pure, it's like pure emotions. Unreal. I can't believe it. Like it's just every day. Every day these people, they hate Jesus. Why do you hate, like, why do you want so bad the Bible to be false? It's literally like love everyone, forgive others because God forgave you, be humble, be meek. Like, don't you want that to be true? Like, where's your emotions there? I don't get it. Atheism is crazy, y'all. Atheists, I wish you well. Christians, God bless.